The movie begins with Paul talking to his son Martin through a video call while working late at a mannequin factory. Martin looks worried and says his mom, Sophie, has been behaving oddly. Paul tries to comfort him, saying everything will be fine soon. Meanwhile, Paul's assistant, Esther, finishes her shift and starts locking up the warehouse. As she switches off the lights in one of the rooms, she notices a shadowy figure standing at the far end. Startled, she flips the lights back on, but the figure is gone. When she turns them off again, the figure returns. On and off, she tests the lights several times. Each time, the shadow vanishes with the light and reappears in the dark. The last time she switches the lights off, the figure suddenly appears right in front of her. Terrified, she quickly turns the lights back on and runs to warn Paul. Esther rushes to Paul and interrupts his video call with Martin. She nervously explains that she saw someone inside the warehouse, but when she turned the lights on, the figure vanished. Paul brushes it off, telling her to head home. Later that night, Paul begins locking up. As he's about to leave, he remembers Esther's warning and decides to check around. Walking through the dim warehouse, he notices something crouching in the shadows. The figure slowly rises when it sees him. Suddenly, the motion sensor light above Paul shuts off. He frantically waves his arms until it switches back on, but now the figure is closer. Terrified, Paul bolts. As he sprints, he passes through a patch of darkness. The figure claws his leg, leaving him bleeding. Limping, he reaches a lit spot and realizes the figure won't step into the light. It can only move through darkness. Paul drags himself back to his office, locks the door, and grabs a bat. The lights flicker, then die completely. The door handle rattles. Something pushes the door open. Paul prepares to fight, but before he can swing, he's yanked into the dark. Moments later, his shredded body is dumped on the far side of the warehouse. A few days later, Martin is about to sleep when he hears his mother, Sophie, whispering to someone. Curious, he follows the voice to her room. She's standing in front of the bathroom, speaking into the darkness. When she notices Martin, she softly says, "Sorry, did we wake you?" Martin looks uneasy, but Sophie sends him back to bed. As he walks away, he glances back. Sophie is at her doorway, but there's also a pale, twisted hand gripping the frame. Martin runs to his room, locks the door, and hides under the covers. The doorknob jiggles. Meanwhile, across town, Martin's older sister Rebecca is spending time with her boyfriend Brett. The next day, Martin dozes off in class again and ends up in the nurse's office. Since the school can't reach Sophie, they call Rebecca. She and Brett meet with Child Protective Services, who explain Martin's recent troubles. Rebecca has a strained history with Sophie ever since their father left years ago. Paul was only her stepdad. Rebecca talks to Martin, who admits he hasn't been able to sleep. She decides to take him home herself. When they arrive at Sophie's house, Brett waits in the car while Rebecca and Martin walk up. Martin whispers that Sophie has been talking to someone named Diana. Rebecca freezes. She knows that name. She insists Diana isn't real, just something Sophie made up. Sophie answers the door and welcomes them in. While Rebecca argues with Sophie about skipping her medication, Martin secretly packs a suitcase. Rebecca announces she's taking him to stay with her for a while. Sophie begs her not to, but Rebecca leaves with Martin. That night, Rebecca wakes up and finds Martin missing from her bed. When she checks for him, she sees the figure hunched at the bedroom door, clawing at the floor. The flickering neon sign from the tattoo shop below throws the room in and out of darkness. Each time the light dies, the figure appears. Suddenly, the figure notices Rebecca and charges toward her, only to vanish again when the sign lights up. The next day, after dropping Martin at school, Rebecca and Brett return to Sophie's house. While Sophie is out, Rebecca explores her old room and finds a box of records. Inside are files about Sophie's time in a mental institution as a child. There, she met a girl named Diana, who suffered from a rare disorder that made her unable to survive in light. Doctors tried a treatment involving powerful lamps, but the experiment killed her. Suddenly, Rebecca hears a noise in her room. Before she can react, the door slams shut, and Diana drags her up toward the ceiling with Rebecca's own necklace. Rebecca struggles to breathe until Brett bursts in, flooding the room with light. Diana vanishes, and Rebecca crashes to the floor. They grab the box of files and escape before Sophie returns with Martin. Later, Sophie spends the evening watching a movie with Martin. She pauses it, then quietly switches off the lights. Martin grows uneasy, but Sophie insists Diana is her friend and only stays when it's dark. Behind Martin, Diana slowly approaches. When she appears at his side, Martin panics and scrambles for a light. Sophie blocks Diana, but Diana slams her to the ground. The distraction gives Martin a chance to escape through the front door. Martin stays at Rebecca's apartment. While Brett runs to the store, Rebecca finally has a chance to talk to Martin alone. He insists that Diana is real. This time, Rebecca admits she believes him. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Assuming it's Brett, Rebecca opens it, but no one is there. Moments later, scratching echoes through the walls. The noise shifts to Rebecca's closet, just like before. She carefully flips on the light and sees nothing. Then out of nowhere, Diana grabs Martin's leg and tries to drag him under the bed. Rebecca pulls with all her strength until Martin is free. Shaken, the three of them return to Sophie's house. Rebecca pleads with her mother to face the truth. Diana's dead, but her spirit is still dangerous. Sophie brushes it off and retreats upstairs to bed. Rebecca decides they'll all stay the night. Brett on the couch, and she'll share a room with Martin. Before going to bed, Rebecca stops by Sophie's room to say goodnight. As she turns to leave, Sophie quietly opens the door, takes Rebecca's hand, and slips her a note. Once Sophie closes the door, Rebecca unfolds it. "I need help." That night, the power across the block suddenly goes out. Diana cut it. Brett heads outside with a flashlight, while Rebecca grabs a wind-up lantern and makes her way to the basement to check the fuse box. Upstairs, Martin wakes and notices Rebecca's gone. Nervous, he lights a candle and wanders into the hall, calling for her. Behind him, Diana appears in the shadows. He spins around, and she vanishes, only to reappear right behind him. The shock knocks him to the ground. She grabs him and drags him backward, but Martin turns the candle toward her, and the light forces her to retreat. Martin scrambles downstairs to the basement and finds Rebecca. She quickly realizes Diana lured them there. As they try to leave, Diana slams the basement door shut from above, trapping them inside. They bang on the door and call out desperately for Brett. Sophie finally understands the truth. Diana was never her friend. She calls out to Diana, telling her that they can't exist together anymore, because the spirit has tied itself to her. Sophie tries to take her medication, but Diana suddenly appears and slams her across the room. Sophie crashes into a nightstand, her head striking hard, and she falls unconscious. At the same time, Brett returns to the house and hears Rebecca and Martin shouting for help from the basement. He rushes toward the door, but in the hallway, he spots Diana waiting for him. She moves closer. Brett shines his flashlight, making her vanish, only for her to reappear at his side. She knocks the light from his hand, sending him sprawling. As she advances, Brett quickly pulls out his phone and uses the screen light to hold her back. It works, until the light dims. Diana reappears and attacks again. Brett stumbles outside toward his car, but under the dark carport, she seizes him, lifting him off the ground. In desperation, he presses his car key, setting off the alarm. The headlights blaze on, forcing Diana to vanish and dropping Brett to safety. Bruised but alive, he scrambles into the car and speeds away to get help. Down in the basement, Rebecca and Martin remain trapped. To keep light alive, Rebecca burns scraps of paper in the furnace and leaves Martin nearby while she searches for supplies. Martin finds an old ultraviolet lamp and gives it to her. But when Diana emerges, they learn the UV glow is too weak to stop her. Rebecca also discovers that one wall of the basement is covered in scribbled writing, proof that Diana has been living there, hidden in constant darkness. Soon, Brett returns with 2 police officers. While Brett stays outside, the officers enter the house. They manage to free Rebecca and Martin from the basement, but as one officer searches the kitchen, Diana ambushes him, killing him instantly. The second officer draws his gun, but Rebecca warns him he needs light to survive. He ignores her, firing at Diana. Each flash from the gunfire makes her vanish briefly, but the bullets do nothing. She reappears and kills him as well. Rebecca and Martin race for the door, but Martin refuses to leave without Sophie. Brett arrives, and Rebecca begs him to take Martin while she goes upstairs. As she searches for Sophie, Diana strikes, grabbing Rebecca and hurling her over the balcony. She slams onto the ground floor but survives the fall. Diana descends, ready to finish her. Suddenly, Sophie steps out, holding a fallen officer's gun. With fire in her eyes, Sophie tells Diana that if she ever hurts her children, she will make her pay. The gunshot echoes. Sophie dies instantly, and Diana disintegrates into nothingness. Rebecca breaks down, sobbing for her mother's sacrifice. In the aftermath, Rebecca, Martin, and Brett sit near the ambulance. Brett wraps his arms around them as the neighborhood lights flicker back on. The nightmare is over. Fade to black. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel for amazing recaps. Thank you for watching.